small business brand awareness. Today you will learn how to increase brand awareness for small businesses without large advertising budgets and often without a dedicated marketing person or department. In many companies, the responsibility of brand awareness falls on the shoulders of the owners, along with a million other details. Today you'll learn some key tips for how to get brand awareness. My name is Tyler Keeney, AMSP's Director of Member Services, and I will be your moderator for today's session. Please note that today's call is being recorded and all participant lines will be muted during this broadcast. You may receive technical assistance by sending an email to michelle@amsp.org and we will respond promptly. There is also a chat feature built into the webinar for questions or requests for technical assistance. We have highly qualified staff ready to help you get connected. Today's presentation will last no more than 60 minutes and includes time for questions. You may ask questions at any time throughout the webinar service using the webinar chat system in the dialog box, which should be to the right of your webinar screen. If you can't locate the chat box, once again, email michelle@amsp.org and we'll help you locate it. You may ask questions at any time using this feature, but please be aware that they will not be answered until the end of the presentation. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce today's presenter. Joining us today is Mike Porter of PrintMail Consultants. Mike has been involved in the document printing and mailing industry for over 35 years. Beginning with a career in the Service Bureau business in Oregon, his experience and knowledge was built on the creation and distribution of high-volume customer communications. During that time, he developed many applications that saved the company money, reduced errors, improved functionality in customer applications, and slashed distribution time. He also managed a mail center, a sales organization, a business unit, production control, and systems and programming professionals. His career then took him to Xerox and Bowie Bell & Howell for several years before he launched PrintMail Consultants in 2006, where he focuses on helping clients improve their document operations. He is a published author with a book for document operations managers, and he is a regular contributor to publications like Mailing Systems Technology and AMSP's Postscripts. Without any further delay, I'll turn the webinar over to Mike.
Thanks, Tyler, and welcome to everyone that's on the call. Whoops. So today we're going to be talking about building brand awareness for your business, why it's important, and how you can do it. And along the way, I'll tell you about some of the experiences my company has had with brand awareness and share some of the things that we've learned. By the way, my comments are all geared towards a business-to-business environment, which I think most of the listeners will be in as well. So I think that will be appropriate. First, let me tell you, whoops, got a little bit of delay here. Hold on. Let me tell you a little bit about our experience and about my company and how we got started and some of the perspectives that we have on brand awareness. We started the consulting practice in 2006 to help companies with their document workflows. And we work on lowering costs and improving productivity and implementing new applications and assisting our clients with just about anything that happens during that whole document production and distribution workflow. We had some early successes, which was great, but in 2008, I was really focusing on developing new leads, and I'll tell you the story. I attended a conference for an organization that I'd been a member of since probably the late 80s. I'd gone to most of their national conferences, and I'd attended a lot of the local events, and I had a lot of contacts that I'd made there over the years. So it seemed like a natural place to go to talk to people and identify some of them that could become customers in the future. I found myself explaining who I was and what my company did over and over to people that I thought would surely know. It turns out that wasn't the case. After returning home from that humbling sort of an experience, I embarked on a strategy to kind of improve our awareness factor. And we'll talk about some of the things that I did here in a few minutes. By the way, it worked. I returned to that conference 2 years later with a completely different experience. Almost everyone I spoke to had heard of me or my company. They remembered articles I wrote or a video that we had done or they had subscribed to my newsletter or something. I had definitely achieved name recognition during that 2 years. So the things that we were doing were definitely working. Interestingly, about the same time, which was 2010, I became aware that other small and medium-sized businesses that were in the document business were having the same issues that I'd been dealing with 2 years earlier. They wanted to be top of mind more often, and they knew that publishing was a way to do that, but they just couldn't get there. The main stumbling block was content creation. Well, that sounded like an opportunity, so I started writing content for some of these kinds of companies for their newsletters and white papers and websites and things like that. So after doing that for a couple of years, we noticed that sometimes we wrote and delivered articles, but they never got used. Clients paid for them, which was great, but I knew that if they never saw a return on their investment, they wouldn't be coming back and returning with more projects for me. So in 2012, we created this product called Ready Communications, which is a complete turnkey email solution where we provide the content and we make sure it gets in front of the audience, among other things. So that sort of brings us up to today, where I get to share some of what I've learned with people from groups like AMSP who want to raise awareness for their own products and services. It can be done, and if we can do it with a staff of one, actually less than one since I was running all the other parts of my business at the same time, then your company can do it too. So we'll move right along here. Getting noticed is really difficult. Just getting that attention for a small to medium-sized business, especially if you have larger competitors with well-funded marketing departments. A lot of my clients are in this mode exactly. They have great solutions, but they're not a household word. And they're overshadowed by like large multinational corporations with big budgets. So this is definitely an issue. Often the subject matter experts in a small organization are the people that are most qualified to create the content and direct the brand awareness strategy, but they're the key people in the company. There's sales managers, engineers, software programmers, or even founders of the company. Sometimes all these rolled up into one, and making time for working on their business is one of the hardest things for them to do, and I'm sure some of the people on the call are in that same boat. Even though they have the best intentions, urgent issues always seem to take priority away from getting an article written or getting a newsletter produced. So it's a real challenge to get that done with the kind of limited resources that are available usually in most of these companies. So let's talk for a few minutes about why you should even care about brand awareness and why we even decided that we wanted to talk about that today. This is a slide. I've got a number of charts I'm going to show you, and this one is from a survey of business-to-business buyers from Demand Gen Report. And in their survey, they asked business-to-business buyers when they first involved a sales representative in their purchasing decision-making process. And you can look at those bottom two bars there and see that 40% of the buyers did their own internal research, and another 23% waited until a short list was created. They actually eliminated potential vendors before they ever made it known that they were shopping. This is why awareness is so important. If prospects don't already have your company in mind, or you don't come up in the search results, you're not even going to make the long list. And if you don't provide the kind of material that you need to help customers evaluate your products and services in those critical moments of that early decision-making process, you're certainly not going to make the short list. So that's why when we talk about brand awareness, it's so important, especially for companies that don't have monster advertising budgets. They need to make it up somehow, and the brand awareness strategies are one way to do that without breaking the bank. I've got charts that I've gathered from several different sources, but today we're going to be talking about brand awareness and how content is related to that, which is the first part of the process. Content actually plays a critical part throughout the entire purchasing and lead nurturing process. There's definitely other kinds of content that will appeal to customers as they get closer to that decision making and they're doing that kind of research that we just talked about. And so that's something to be aware of as you think going through that sales process, from the time you get somebody's attention to the time that you can actually start talking about closing the sale. Content plays a part in all those places. And my session at the AMSP conference in June is actually going to be talking more in detail about creating that kind of content that's appropriate in those other phases. But we already have a website. I hear that a lot from clients, and some of those sites are great. Many, frankly, need to work, but this is really important. If you've gone to the trouble to get prospects acquainted with your brand and interested in your product, then your website fails to impress them, well, you're still missing opportunities. So a website is sort of like an anchor point where you have complete control over every aspect of the visitor experience, which is rare. I mean, in a lot of cases, you don't have that kind of control. But even the most fantastic site isn't much good unless you're getting prospects to visit. And this is what some of those other aspects of brand awareness can help you do. This was a startling statistic from HubSpot. They say that 3/4 of the searchers never get past page 1 of the search results, which is a little scary, especially if your company isn't showing up until pages 2 or 3 or beyond. The chances on being found diminish the further back you get into those search results. And getting on that first page can be very difficult if your company has a large number of competitors or even a small number that are actively promoting their own brand. So that's one of the reasons why we like using some methods where you have a little more control instead of leaving your fate in the hands of just the search engine robots. We've actually been doing newsletters since 2006, and they've been great. If clients can do only one thing and they don't know where to start, I usually recommend the newsletters. The reason I like them so much is that they're really flexible and they give you a lot of control over everything from informational content to marketing messages and the schedule. You can include links back to landing pages and track the click-throughs. And some programs even track contact actions over time and what sites they visited and what pages they went to, and you can actually get a pretty good profile of someone's interest in your products and services. Other types of email marketing programs simply tell you about the opens and the clicks, which is still worthwhile to know. For us, newsletters have really spurred contacts to reach out with inquiries. They've referred us to others. They've opened up other opportunities, which helped us to widen our audience even further through things like speaking and publishing. So I'm really sold on our outbound email program as being a real important part of our overall brand awareness strategy. But newsletters aren't the only things that we did during that 2-year period when we were building up our brand awareness. We updated our website. I wrote articles for trade publications. I found speaking opportunities. I did interviews and webinars. Started using LinkedIn. We produced some videos. Looked for places in social networks and blogs to comment on posts and get involved in a conversation along those things. And all those things together really helped to raise awareness for PrintMail Consultants and the name. And at the same time, it helped us with those organic search results, because we had content that was scattered all over the web on different sites with links back to our site, and that really helps with the search engine results there. One of the things that's tough for a lot of people when they start creating content is that they forget about being heavy on information and low on marketing. The natural tendency is kind of to do it in reverse, and I've had several clients that have had a real tough time with this, where we'll produce some informational content and it'll be relevant and hitting on what challenges their audience is facing, and they come back to me and they go, wait, you didn't tell them to buy our product. And that's kind of missing the point for informational content. It's actually counterproductive to do that. People really know where to find information about your products and services. When they're ready to evaluate those choices, they go to your website. That's why we were talking about a few slides ago that the website is so important. Yeah, but if your objective is to be top of mind so that they remember to go to your site when they're getting serious about buying, then you really need to keep them reading your material on a continuous basis, and it's the relevant educational material that does that. This is especially important for repetitive communications like newsletters. It's the educational content, that keeps people opening your emails and subscribing to your list. This is the content that gets shared with the newsletter subscribers networks of coworkers and counterparts. And by the way that most business people share information is by email. So by having our newsletter delivered through email, it kind of helps to facilitate that as well. Another lesson that was really hard for me was about keeping it brief. I had so much information that I wanted to share. And I'll tell you, looking back today, I can't believe I did this, but some of my newsletters had articles that were like 1,500 words. That's like 3 pages full. It was really long, and I soon realized that people didn't have the time to consume that much information. And this was back in 2006. Imagine today when we've got even more messaging coming at us all the time. But what was happening was people were looking at that lengthy article and saying, I don't have time right now, I'll come back to it later. Well, of course, that time never came. And so all that work to create that content went to waste because nobody was reading. So keeping the messages brief is pretty important. You need to keep it focused. You need to be concise. You can't ramble on in order to try and make your point. It really needs to be moving along in order to keep people's interest. Along those lines, I also recommend sticking with a single article instead of a collection. I know a lot of people like the collection kind of a newsletter. Well, they'll have half a dozen different articles, and you can. The thinking is that somebody will read some of those, which is probably true, but I would rather direct the attention of the reader to the content that I think is important, rather than leaving it up to chance for them to choose. And it's also a lot more work to first create all that extra content, and secondly, to build in things like compelling call to action that kind of link in with each of those individual types of articles. So this slide that we're looking at here from Demand Gen Report tells us that business-to-business buyers agree with that, and that they really want the content to be short, and it also kind of reinforces those about being informational and keeping the marketing content to a minimum. Here's some things that we've learned over the years that are really important in achieving success in brand awareness, and these things we kind of learned over time. And if you can manage to do just these 4 things, I think you're going to see some definite improvement in the way that people recognize your products and services and the way they start interacting with other content that you might have available. The first thing is consistency. It's really important to set a schedule and stick to it. And there's really 3 reasons for this. First, your contacts will come to expect your messages on a regular basis, which then reduces the chances that they're going to end up in the spam folder, or they're going to get ignored, or someone's going to forget that they actually subscribe to it and unsubscribe. Secondly, once a schedule starts to slip, it's been my experience that it just gets worse from there. Monthly emails turn into bi-monthly, and then they go to quarterly, and then they're kind of random, and then they sort of peter out altogether. I have seen this happen time after time after time. I've got one client that we went to look at what they'd done in the past, and I saw on their website they had newsletters, so naturally I checked that out, see what they had. They had 4 newsletters in their archive that they had made available on the website over the space of 6 years. And 3 of the 4 newsletters said, "Welcome to the first edition of our newsletter." So obviously they had trouble with sustaining that effort, and that's not uncommon. So it's really important to keep that going. Once you kind of lose that momentum and you're not keeping the articles coming, and you're not keeping up on this program, you really lose effectiveness, and you don't achieve your objectives of staying top of mind. The second success factor that I've got listed there is frequency. Publishing too frequently really places a burden on the people that are responsible for creating the content in the first place, which tends to lead to failure eventually. Plus, too many messages can overwhelm your contacts and contribute to unsubscribe, so you lose your audience that way. And then publishing too infrequently reduces the effectiveness of the brand awareness effort. For newsletters, we found that a monthly publication schedule is about right. You need to remember that even though we write brilliant articles and we put together a beautiful newsletter, chances are only 20 to 30% of your list is ever going to open those emails on an individual basis. So if you go with something like a quarterly distribution, you're only doing quarterly emails, well, you may only be getting your message in front of each of those customers once a year, which is certainly not enough. If what you're trying to do is stay top of mind so that they think of you when it gets to be that time when they start to think about products and services that you can provide and who's going to be able to get that to them. Third item there is content. As we said before, content that addresses your prospects' challenges and has values on its own, whether they buy your product or not, is the most effective for keeping your audience engaged with your brand over a long period of time. And that's kind of the litmus test for me is if the article I'm reading provides some value for the reader, but they don't have to buy the writer's products or sign up with their service in order to make it worthwhile, then that's a really good piece of informational content. So make sure it's interesting. It has to be well written and understandable. This is really important to make sure that you don't have spelling and grammar errors and word usage errors. I just ran across one last night. It was someone was talking about AWOL, about customers going AWOL. I think it had to do with collections, but they spelled it A-W-A-L-L. Now, AWOL stands for absent without leave, which is a military term. A-W-O-L, all caps. So it's kind of embarrassing whenever you run across those kinds of things, and we've all done them. But if writing isn't your thing, If you don't have time to proofread, then make sure you line up some help in order to get that before it gets out into the public domain there. The last thing on that list is list growth, and this is something that's often overlooked. I have clients that send me their contact list for newsletters, and then they never try to add to it. Now, there's lots of ways to collect names legitimately. Now, I don't recommend that you buy lists if you're going to be contacting by email. Most reputable email service providers won't even allow them, and it's against the spam laws because they haven't actually granted your company permission to contact them. So stay away from those if you're going to be concentrating on email communication. But there's lots of other things that you can do to promote list growth. And if you're not doing that, your list is naturally going to shrink over time. People unsubscribe, people leave a company, and so their email address bounces back, and so your list is eventually going to shrink. So make sure that you're not passing up on opportunities to let people know that you're distributing information, useful information, and all they have to do is sign up in order to get that. We do that all the time. I have it in my Outlook email signature. Every article that I publish has an attribution paragraph at the end that talks about our newsletters. We talk about it in every presentation that we do. There's just lots of different ways. An incentive is also a great thing to have on your website, and I'm sure you've seen this with other people, is to download the white paper. You've got to sign up for their list. Those kinds of things are worthwhile to try as well. So don't be too lax on that, because if your list is shrinking, then your returns start diminishing as well. So here's some more ways to raise awareness, and we've done all these things that are on the slide. Now, it looks kind of overwhelming, and you certainly don't have to start off by trying to tackle all these things at once. Matter of fact, that would be a horrible decision. I don't think anybody could do that unless you actually had some dedicated staff to take care of this for you. But what we recommend is start with something small that's manageable that you can be successful with, and then add things as you go along. And just keep on increasing those channels over time. Now, the reason you want to do this is one's for search engine ranking. We can talk a little bit about that, of having content spread out across the web on different sites, and linking back to your site helps you with your search engine rankings on the search result pages. But you also are able to reach different audiences and establish your company as a recognized source of information across multiple channels. So you get that kind of recognition, and it's the same reason that people advertise on billboards and on radio or television or in print, that you want to have your message out there and visible and have people encounter that in different ways. And these are all some ways that you could do that. Now, it's important also, by the way, as you're thinking about this, that you put your content where your customers are. Visiting LinkedIn groups about print service providers is a great way to gain knowledge and keep up with what's going on in the industry, and certainly you do want to do that, but that's probably not where your future customers are reading. Find outlets that cater to real estate brokers or independent insurance agents or auto repair shops or whatever markets you serve, and find out from them how you can participate. Most publications are starving for content. They will fall all over themselves if you volunteer to provide them content. They just love that, because there's just not enough to go around. So if you can figure out where those publications are and also to provide them content, I think you'll get a receptive audience there. I promised you some ideas on some things that you could do right away to kind of get on a path of brand awareness, and here they are on the slide here. And none of these things really have to cost you any money, but you might consider enlisting some outside help if that's the only way that it's going to get done. Otherwise, you're going to be right back where you are today 6 months from now. And believe me, I have had this conversation many times with clients who have understood the value of outbound emails and of doing case studies and fixing their website, but there was always something else that was more important they needed to take care of first. And it's really depressing to have that same conversation several months down the road. Well, what have you done? Well, we never did get around to getting that white paper done. We never finished up on the website. We got halfway through, and then we had this other thing come up, and there's all kinds of things that will happen. So you really want to get some help to get you started if that's the way it's gonna work out. First thing I've got on my list there is about adding informational content to your website. Write up something about folder self-mailers or QR codes, or talk about the lift that personalization brings to direct mail marketing, or post a short success story about an interesting fulfillment project that you did. Whatever it is that you do, most companies can really use some fresh content that isn't just about buying your services. So think about that. That's a really easy thing to do. It's all under your control. It's all under your schedule. You can test it. You can do it whenever you want. Second thing, surveying your customers. If you don't know what you should write about, you can ask your customers. And you can use services like SurveyMonkey or something fancier. I've even done surveys using Google Docs. But it's a really great way to, you can actually get content from doing the survey by reporting back to your newsletter subscribers or your email list or whoever it is that you're talking to about the results of the survey. Besides it providing you with valuable information about what your customers want to hear about. Getting your contact list together. This is a task that can derail an outbound email strategy before it even gets started. And you're going to have to do it eventually, so you might as well get started. Most organizations have lists of prospects and customers in multiple files. I caution people to not get too tangled up in a complicated list cleanup project because they almost never get done. It's better just to do the basics, maybe separate your prospects from your customers, and then get started in contacting that database and then cleaning it up as you go when you have more time. At least you avoid that kind of situation where months have gone by and your competitors have been creating content and establishing themselves as an informational resource for your market while you've been thinking about maybe getting to cleaning up your mailing list one of these days. Editorial calendars. These are great, and I just kind of stumbled over this last year. We created editorial calendars for some of our clients, and they loved them. It's really made a world of difference for a lot of our clients. You can always make changes, but somehow having a calendar that tells you what topics that you're going to cover from month to month really helps with the motivation to get it done, even if you end up writing about something else. It's an amazing kind of a thing, and it only takes maybe 30 minutes to sit down and say, okay, January, let's cover this. February, let's cover that. And put it on a Word document or a spreadsheet or tack it to the wall, put it on the whiteboard, and it does amazing, magical things for your ability to actually create that content. The last thing I put there was to decide about an outbound email program. There are a ton of choices. If you decide to do it yourself, you might choose a standalone product like some of those I've listed here, or a more integrated customer relationship management type of solution. There are a number of varieties at a number of different price points. Some of them are free. Just remember that what you're buying is the framework to be able to do that communication. So there's still plenty of work to be done. Don't get yourself into a product that is so complicated and has so many interrelated hooks that it's impossible for you to get it up and going. Much better to start with something, get something out there, get it working for you, and then add that functionality as you go. So you also want to avoid things like buying a hugely complicated program and paying for it when it might be 9, 10, 12 months before you're actually even ready to introduce all that extra functionality. So looking for products where you can grow with that or migrate from one to another is something that's not a bad strategy to have as well. So that's all the comments I have for today. Here's my contact information if anyone has individual situations they want to discuss. I've also listed there the newsletter that covers content marketing and brand awareness and lead nurturing. It's called Customer Retention Now. If you go to the website there, you'll see the sign-up box for that. It's pretty obvious. So that's all the comments I have for now. Tyler, if we've got any questions, we'll take them now.
Thank you, Mike. We have now come to the question and answer segment of this webinar where audience participation is requested. So please submit your questions now through the webinar system using the chat box through the dialog box on the webinar screen. Actually, it looks like we have a question for you, Mike, in the queue. What about search engine optimization? How does a company get on that first page of search results?
That's a great question. It's I don't talk a lot about search engine optimization simply because it's very difficult to do, especially in the case of a small company that has large competitors, or if you're in a market where there are a lot of competitors. Just getting on that first page is really difficult to do. But I will tell you, so I don't try to do things like manipulating the search engines or doing this black magic voodoo SEO stuff that some people try to have you pay large sums of money to have done. I'm not saying that doesn't work, but it's a lot of work to keep up on that because the algorithms keep changing, and what worked this month may not work next month. So instead of doing that, what we've tried to do is try to do some common sense things to try and appeal to the search engines, and that includes publishing consistently, and sticking to a certain set of subjects rather than shotgunning all over the place, so that we kind of build a reputation on a certain subset of subjects that we cover all the time. I always include, as I said, my name, company name, website, those kind of things in the attribution paragraphs of articles that we publish. And we publish to several different outlets. The more the merrier as that comes about. And we refresh our website content regularly. If that's one thing that Google and the other search engines are looking for when they decide whether this is a site that they should return in the search results and how current things are. If it's been the same content for the last 3 years, chances are you're going to get a lower score than if you're refreshing that on a fairly regular basis. It doesn't have to be every month, but you should be thinking about at least doing something on maybe on a quarterly basis, if that's what you can handle, to change that website content, and that will help.
Thanks, Mike. That's very helpful. We actually have another question that came in. What do you see as the biggest challenge for small businesses when it comes to brand awareness strategy?
One of the things that I run up against a lot is kind of a mistaken expectations for what brand awareness does and content marketing and how it works. I've had companies that published a single article or issued their first newsletter, and then were really disappointed when a whole bucket full of new leads didn't come rolling in. It just doesn't happen that way. The results are usually more long-term, and they are all interrelated. Brand awareness isn't like a traditional sales and marketing campaign. All those different pieces like newsletters or blogs or video or website content or landing pages, and those are all parts that all of them influence each other. So picking an item and trying to connect it to sales is pretty difficult to do. I'm not saying that at times that you won't be able to actually do that, but it's pretty rare. It's the combination of all those kinds of things, and they don't happen overnight. Remember, your intention is to be top of mind for when those customers decide that they are in the market for your business. You don't want to be in those 2/3 of people that started making decisions about who they're going to hire to do their work or buy their product before they even give you a chance to make your presentation. So the idea is, let's increase our chances of being in that short list of possible vendors by consistently reminding people who we are, what we do, and why we're on that list.
Okay, thanks very much, Mike. But particularly for small businesses, I think this is a very appropriate question. In terms of the brand awareness strategy, what does it generally cost? Or is that too broad a question?
No, it's not too broad of a question. A lot of that depends, of course, on how many things you're doing and how much of it you're doing on your own. When we started, that first newsletter I did, which, by the way, I think I had 50 people on my list, the first newsletter I sent out, and I grew it from there. But for a good portion of that time, I'd say for 2 or 3 years, we were spending, I think, $25 a month for our email marketing software, and that was it. Everything else, I was doing all the work myself, so there were no out-of-pocket costs, just lots of time. Now, you can go to a public relations agency or an advertising agency and obviously spend a lot more money than that because they're doing those kinds of things for you. Our Ready Communications program, the one I talked about at the top that we just developed last year, those customers are spending an average of about $3 per contact per year to get 12 newsletters written, produced, and sent out to them. So that's more expensive than a do-it-yourself kind of a solution, but it gets done. And that's what customers are willing to pay for there, is that they've realized that they can't do that on their own, so they're willing to spend a little bit more money to do that. And usually, depending upon what it is you're selling and the size of your list, it takes a very small percentage of those emails to turn into a communication that results in a sale to pay for itself. So most of these things, the ROI, even though you can't really connect your expenses to your sales because you never know for sure, which customers stayed with us and didn't go to a competitor because they like our newsletter, and which one of them, how many people told their friends about something that they read in one of our newsletters, and we didn't track the link, so we didn't know that transaction happened, but the other person eventually called us and bought something. So it's really hard to compute a real ROI, but you can get a pretty good idea by figuring out, how much you're going to spend and how much each individual sale is worth to you. So kind of a vague answer there. It's easy to spend $2,000 a month, and you end up doing a lot of the work yourself. You can also spend nothing. There are some email marketing programs that you can get for nothing. Now, they're pretty limited functionality. And yes, you've got to do a lot of the work yourself. But you can do that if you wanted to. So it's kind of all over the map. The nice thing is you can find the products that fit your budget and fit the time that you have available. And of the two, I'd say the time available is probably the most important factor.
Okay, thanks very much, Mike. You actually answered the next question I was going to ask. that came in through the queue about ROI. So I think that handled that, so we'll skip over that question. But you mentioned about the email programs that you have experience with. How do you personally use email tracking, and do you have any kind of best practices you can recommend?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I started off using kind of a generic email marketing program, and it worked for me for a number of years, and it was great. It was easy to use, and it got us going, and it didn't take a lot of extra work to do that. But we got to the point where some of the functionality there that we thought we wanted just wasn't there, and so we ended up moving up to something that tracks it. The original program that we were using, you could look at a single email that you sent out. Let's say it was our March newsletter, and within that you could see how many people opened, how many people clicked, how many people forwarded to a friend, and you could actually go in and actually identify the contacts on your list that took those actions. Oh, here's the people that opened it, here's the people that clicked on this link, here's the people that clicked on that link. That was great. However, what it didn't do is give you a picture over time. So I couldn't go back like over the last 6 months and say, what has this particular contact done? How involved is he with our brand? I mean, I know he opened the March email, but did he open the February email? Well, to do that, I'd have to go back, open the February email, see if he's there. It would have been a whole manual spreadsheet kind of a thing, and it was too much work. So we ended up graduating to a more functional type of program that does provide that kind of tracking. So now I can not only keep track over time of the individual contacts' activity, which emails they opened, which ones they clicked, what links they clicked on, what landing pages they went to. I've also got code on my website so that if they go to a page on my website, I can track that. It makes it a lot easier to identify those contacts that are more engaged with our brand. And that way, I can spend more of my time following up with those people and delivering them deeper content, because I know they're more interested than what I call the tire kickers, the people that are subscribed to my newsletter, but they never do anything else. So that's kind of where we are now, and there are a lot of products that offer different levels of tracking, and you just have to decide what's important to you. And as I said before, it's not a bad thing to start with something simple and then migrate along like we did when you're ready. It's a lot better to do that than to buy something that's so complicated that it takes you 6 months to get it in.
Okay, that's great. That's very helpful. I appreciate that background, Mike. We are now at the point where we're almost out of time, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up. We're going to conclude today's program, Achieving Small Business Brand Awareness. Thank you to our presenter, Mike Porter. If you'd like to hear more from Mike, he will be presenting at the 2013 AMSP Annual Conference in San Diego, California, the end of June, and more details can be found on the AMSP website. At the end of the webinar, you will automatically be directed to an online evaluation. Please take a few moments to answer the survey and give us your feedback on this webinar. Your comments and suggestions are very important to us as they help us to provide you with continued quality educational programming. This concludes today's program, and we thank you for your participation. The webinar will automatically end. Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler.